a black journalist and a life member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Please help me welcome Mr. Roland, everybody.
Please say it. It greatly pained him to say that alpha part. All right, so first of all, we got to do something. Y'all got these big ass plants. The people over here cannot see me. Y'all didn't want to say nothing. I don't know what's wrong with y'all. So take that plant down. Take that plant down. So when you the keynote speaker, you got privileges. Like earlier, Lynn didn't want to call her AKAs up. She was like, "No, you go ahead and do it." I'm like, "Yo, AKAs, it's your picture." So that's why I call your name and did it myself. All right, there you go. Glad to be here. Always glad to come back to H-Town. I live in D.C. now. But the people always ask me, they say, "Where you live?" I say, "Where you from?" I said, "No, I live in D.C., but I'm from Houston." So I make that very clear. And especially now that Juneteenth is a federal holiday, you know, all these folks now, we got Juneteenth events here and here, but I got to constantly remind them where it started, Galveston, but in Texas it was first a holiday before anybody else. And so just in case other folk get a little confused, which is also why I've already I communicated with Mayor Turner this week. I said, because they got a big celebration tomorrow in Los Angeles. Questlove has curated this big event, the Hollywood Bowl. CNN is live streaming it. There's a big celebration in D.C. And I said, Mayor, don't let no other city try to dominate Juneteenth. I said, the biggest celebration for Juneteenth must be in Houston every single year. So we look forward to that happening. So glad to see so many folks here. My sister Levita, her husband Manasseh are here. All my family is here. If I invited my family, none of y'all could have had a ticket. I got like 500 relatives in Houston. We were born and raised Catholic. We believed in procreation. So I was like, look, they mad because I didn't even tell anybody I was coming back. My sister called me. She's like, "You here?" I'm like, "Yeah. You want to come tonight?" Just y'all two. Nobody else. So glad to see them out here. And of course, all the Alpha brothers as well. And so it's always good. Let's get right to it. In the introduction, he talked about my show, Roland Martin Unfiltered. And I want to thank so many folks who've been watching me over the years, listening over the years. You're the ones who make it possible. But we didn't just launch this show 4 years ago. In September, we launched OTT Network, Black Star Network. You can download it on all platforms. And y'all clap, go ahead. And the reason that is important is because it's black owned. And when I say it's black owned, what that means is I don't have to ask somebody permission. Can we do this? And so when they had the meet and greet a little bit earlier, the reason I wasn't in there taking pictures is because I was actually doing the show. Right now, we are live streaming this speech. And the reason that's important because the nation's first black newspaper, Freedom's Journal, their lead editorial said this on March 16, 1827, "We wish to plead our own cause, too long have others spoken for us." And one of the things that has always happened is that in this country, we have always had to ask permission to do certain things. We've had to go head bowed, hat in hand, please, can I do this? And I've never quite been somebody who liked asking somebody else for permission. So earlier this week, we were in Atlanta covering the UNCF's Higher Education Summit. I'll be in Ann Arbor, the University of Michigan tomorrow. On Saturday, we'll be broadcasting from Reverend Dr. Barber's Poor People's Campaign in Washington, D.C. And that's because I don't have to ask somebody, can I, because I own it. Own the cameras, own the equipment. And that concept is hard for some people because if we really want to be honest, many of us have been conditioned to think that we are destined to have a job and to be employees. Yet I grew up with a grandmother who had a catering business, with a grandfather who had a business, with my mom who had a cake business. And so I understand. I was seeing at 7, 8, 9, and 10 the lessons watching her book weddings. My grandmother, I still use today, and I would sit there and I would see folks who were they would come in there, they would do these weddings, and they would spend 4 hours booking a wedding. So she's in her dining room, I'm sitting over there, either with the bride's daddy or the fiance, watching her bride and the mama sit there all this time in there, which I never understand. Like, if it's their wedding, don't even get me started on that. So we're sitting there and I'm watching this, and I would see people sit here with my grandmother, and they'd be going through this stuff, looking at invitations and plates and flowers and all sort of stuff, and then they would say, I want this and this and this and this and this and this and this, and then get to the end and she tabulated, it'd be like $28,000. They go, Miss Blum, we only got $7,500. Well, y'all should have came in here and said from the top we only got $7,500. And so all those lessons watching that, I literally still apply to what I'm doing right now. And so for me, it wasn't scary when TV One ended News One Now. And a lot of people were shocked and they were upset and angry when Alfred Liggins, the CEO, told me they were ending the show. I didn't flinch. I wasn't upset. It wasn't a punch to my gut, because literally as he was talking, telling me why they were ending the show, I was already planning on who I was going to call when I walked out of the room. And literally, when I walked out, I met with D'Angela Proctor. She and I went to Yates together. She's a Hollywood producer, and she worked at TV One at the time. And we went to her office. She says, she said, aren't you shocked? And I was like, I have no time being worried about being shocked, because I'm planning. I'm planning. I was already there. I was already moving. The last show was December 21st, 2017. I had a meeting with a potential sponsor. 2 hours later, 24 hours later, we had our first sponsor at $250,000. See, I wasn't about to sit there and moan and have a funeral and be all upset, because what the opportunity did was, some saw that as an ending, as a closure, as somehow this being sad, when the reality is what that did was create the opportunity for me to then say, fine, I can now own it and control it. And now begin to hire and begin to do some things that we couldn't even do then. Because what that created was a level of freedom from someone else's system. And so when we talk about Juneteenth, we cannot continue to have this discussion where we're saying it's a Juneteenth commemoration or Juneteenth celebration if we do not incorporate the word freedom into it. And it's the freedom to be able to make the decisions, the freedom to be able to cover certain things. When Harry calls me and says, hey, the Moral Foundation is doing this. Can you stream this out to your 860,000 followers on YouTube, 1.3 million on Twitter, 640,000 on Instagram, 700,000 on Twitter? The answer is yes, because I ain't got to ask nobody. When Reverend Barber calls me and says, hey, we have a march in Elizabeth City for this brother who was shot and killed by the cops. Can you come there and broadcast? The answer is yes, because I don't have to seek someone else's opinion. That is what ownership means. Ownership also allows to have economic freedom, because when you are debt free, you can tell people exactly where they need to go at the appropriate time. And so if we're going to be talking about Juneteenth in 2022, there has to be a clearly defined purpose in terms of what we are trying to do with this holiday. And so when I look at these events, when I look at these companies and all of a sudden having Juneteenth events and they sit in the June selling Juneteenth products and all these different events, my perspective is totally different. Because see, what I'm asking is, if you're having events for Juneteenth, are you having them at black-owned catering events? Are you using black-owned caterers? Are you using black-owned audiovisual companies? Are you using black-owned photographers? Are you driving an economic agenda on a holiday that's supposed to be about freedom? See, these are the questions that we literally have to be asking ourselves, because what is happening far too much in this country is that we continue to be America's great consumer. America has always loved us because we've always made America money. Oh, let's just be real clear. During slavery, America loved us because there was no capitalism system in America until it was created by people of African descent who were enslaved. People talk about American Industrial Revolution. Where did America get its money during the Industrial Revolution? It came from the riches of free labor during slavery. You cannot talk about how this nation was built unless you have to confront and deal with how it was able to do so for 243 years with free labor. Then you had 10 to 12 years of Reconstruction, and then the Great Compromise of 1877 and ushered in 92 years of Jim Crow. So really you had 350 years of free labor. So when people say America is the greatest economy in the world, that ain't got a damn thing to do with the stock market or Rockefeller or Carnegie or any of them. It has to do with black people. And so what has to happen now is we must assume a 63, 64, 65 had, because their understanding was education and economics. If you begin to realize that in that period right after the end of slavery, there was an explosion of schools opening. There were white abolitionists who were coming from the north, coming to the south, and they were saying, oh, we're here to help y'all. They're like, hey, we good. We already started some schools. Y'all can help, but y'all late. Literally, there were 500 schools. Washington, D.C., 30% of white students were enrolled in school, and in Memphis, 97% of black kids were, because slaves figured out, hold up, if I was caught reading, there must be something about that book that's powerful that will result in death. And so, when I say that we have to look at this thing differently, I use this phrase all the time on the show. We have to have a reprogramming, an actual reprogramming. Because see, it's great for us to gather. It's great for us to come together and have events. But I'm always saying, who's getting paid off the event? And I know there's some folk who's sitting here saying, why you always got to bring up money? Because if you can't talk about America, well, you talk about money. America only understands money. Okay, help me with this. How many of y'all been to Washington, D.C.? Raise your hand. How many of y'all been to the White House? There's one federal agency that shares a lawn with the White House. They can literally play flag football on the White House lawn. You can be 100 steps out of this building than you in the East Wing. It's not Defense. It's not the DOJ. It's not Health and Human Services. It's none of those departments. It's Treasury. White House, power. Treasury, money. Treasury, money. White House, power. If you want to understand America, that's all you need to know. What sits right next to the White House? Money. Okay. Black folks said, please, baby, please stop forcing us to sit in the back. Hell no. Fine. December 1st, 1955, black people said, we ain't getting on the bus. 381 days later, Supreme Court ruled. What was that about? Money. Trust me, they felt it in Montgomery when 50,000 black people did not get on buses. When 4 North Carolina A&T students chose to boycott a lunch counter, it spread like wildfire all across the South. They quickly began to integrate lunch counters. Why? Money. If you want to get America's attention, you must talk about the money. Coretta Scott King actually said, they killed my Martin when he started talking about the money. America does not mind us talking about mass incarceration. They don't mind us talking about voting rights. They don't mind us talking about those things. But when you start talking about the money, then stuff begins to shift. Which is why when we're talking about today's social justice, you must talk about economic social justice. You have, in the wake of George Floyd's death, you have literally had $30 to $50 billion being promised by various companies. And here we are 2 years later, and every single person here should be asking, what have they done with those promises? Were they about press releases? Were they about getting attention? Were they about posting on Twitter and Instagram? Or were they serious about those decisions? It's the money. So we're talking about celebrating or commemorating Juneteenth. What we should be asking ourselves is, how does this federal government spend $560 billion a year on contracts, and African Americans are getting 1.67%? What we should be asking is, how does this federal government spend $1 billion in advertising, and black-owned media is getting $51 million, which is 1%? Which then begins to ask the question, then what is the state of Texas spending? What is the city of Houston spending? Harris County, Fort Bend, Missouri City, all of this. It comes down to the money, because if you want to talk about mass incarceration, education, all those issues, I can show you money is tied directly to it. As John Hope Bryan says, you ain't never seen a riot in a neighborhood with a credit score 700 or higher. So if we are going to be living in the 21st century, then what we have to begin to do is have a dramatic shift in our thinking and our actions, and begin to say, where's the money? And what happens is, I see this all the time. People will say, well, you know, these things take time. Let me be real clear. My mom and daddy are 75. They just celebrated the 55th wedding anniversary. I'm 53. Everybody has an expiration date. I am not interested in waiting. I think we've waited long enough. There has to be a sense of urgency when it comes to this very issue. There has to be a completely different focus. We have to also begin to utilize our resources and our organizations in a totally different way. In King's book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community, which is a book that every person in here should have on their shelf. I guarantee you I sold more copies of this book than the King children combined. Because I've been talking about this book for more than a decade. If you read that book, he literally is laying out a blueprint that if you read it today, you swore he wrote it last year. And in there he says that there are 4 prime institutions that are positioned to liberate black people. The Negro Church, the Negro Press, Negro fraternities and sororities, and Negro professional groups. And this is what MLK writes: none of them have fully given themselves to the liberation of black people. Fully given themselves. Now, I know somebody that's listening right now, and they like, I can't believe he said that. Yep, I told the Alphas that. I told the AKs that. I told the Deltas that. I told the Boule, the Kappas, the Omegas, the Zetas, Sigma Gamma Rho. I told all of them. Because if we want to, again, be real honest, we cute in our colors. We have our meetings. We spend significant amounts of money on stuff with our logos on it, but we're spending. Answer me this. Outside of Delta days, or Alpha Day and AKA Day, how often are we showing up in mass at the school board meeting? Okay, let me break it down further. All right, see, right now, I can already see some of y'all shifting in y'all seats. And let me explain to y'all what that particular move is. I am very good at putting people in rhetorical body bags on television. And so the move that you just made is what I call the butt dance. And so the butt dance is when you start shifting in your chair because it's getting a little uncomfortable. So let me just help you out just a little bit. See, my wife is an ordained minister. If you desire comfort, you should have invited her. She could have prayed with you, consoled you, laid hands on you, all of that. God has given her a spirit of comfort. God has given me a spirit of discomfort. I've always made I make my family uncomfortable. I'm the one in the family they don't call for consultation. They call for decision. When Roland gets called, decisions are made. And they typically are one-way decisions. So they understand that. So if the person next to you is doing a little butt dance, just reach over, pat them on their hand, say, baby, it's going to be okay. He has a 5 a.m. flight to Chicago. We will not be here much longer. It's okay. If you take the holidays out of the year, pretty much, all right, Lynn, how many times y'all meet a year? City council once a month? Twice a month. Okay, twice a month. Okay, fine. How many months? 10? Whole year, 24 meetings.
Plus special council.
Okay, plus special council meeting. All right, so that's fine. So if you take the Divine Nine, add Eastern Star, add Prince Hall Masons, add the Links, that's 12 organizations. Please explain to me why those 12 organizations can't pick 2 of those meetings for the members to show up in mass to say, this is what we are advocating for in our agenda. See, there should be a situation where if a group of women come in red and white, politicians, black or white, Latino or Asian, should be saying, damn, here come them deltas. If they see black and gold, if they see purple and gold, if they sit here and see blue and white, they should know exactly who's coming. But if they see that and they don't know, and if they see that once every now and then, they go, who's that? That means clearly we have not done our job. The Divine Nine alone is 2 million people in this country. How are we actually using our power? Are we just meeting to meet? Are we talking about how wonderful we are? Okay, I'm going to give you this one here. If the Divine Nine, each one of the presidents sends an email out every month and say, we as a collective are purchasing this book, the Divine Nine alone can be responsible for a black author making the New York Times bestseller list every single month. That's called collective power. Oh, just in case you think I'm just making this up, please go listen and read Dr. King's speech, April 3rd, 1968, at Mason Temple, the night before he was killed, where he literally said black people individually are poor, yet collectively we represent one of the top 10 economies in the world. That still exists. And so are we operating with collective economics, or are we operating with individual aspirations? See, it's one thing for us to celebrate Robert Smith being worth $7 billion and Oprah being worth $3 billion and Michael Jordan being worth $1 billion. It's great when we sit here and we hop on Clubhouse, and Clubhouse goes from a launch in 1 month and 9 months later with a $4 billion evaluation because we made it sexy. It's real great when we walk around talking about, man, I bought my kids some Nikes, but did you buy your kids some Nikes, or did you buy your child some Nike stock? This is an economic conversation that we have to be having, because we are not going to be able to fulfill the dream of those formerly enslaved people if we are not reaching economic freedom. And economic freedom means demanding of the very system that has gotten enriched off of our labor, saying you got to have a return on investment. So that means, how much are we drinking of certain products? I remember when I was in NABJ, I'm a 3-time board member, just got elected to our Hall of Fame in December, and we had a board meeting, and they decided to ban the acceptance of alcohol money. Now, y'all, I don't drink. I ain't never drank in my life. But I was confused why we wouldn't accept alcohol money when we literally picked convention hotels based upon how big their lobby are where folks assemble to drink. And I was confused. Again, I don't drink. But I was like, if we drink, if the food and the beverage, if we exceed the food and beverage contract, because we consume the hell out of Hennessy, why are we not trying to take some Hennessy money? I was confused. So we had a meeting, and I actually led the changing of the rule, and folk came cussing me out. I said, I'm just confused. You're spending money on brown liquor, but as an organization, you don't want to accept liquor company money. That literally is the dumbest that I've ever heard. Which now forces every person in the room to ask this question. What are we collectively spending on, and what are those companies then giving to us in return? So let me challenge some organizations in the room, okay? You have some banquets and you have some events, and you have corporations that decide to buy tables at your events, and that's cute. But I need you to create you a racial economic index. I need you to be asking the question, those very same corporations who want to buy your table at the NAACP banquet, at the Freedom Fund banquet, at the Urban League event, you need to be asking them, first of all, got any black board members? How many black senior execs? How many black junior execs? What's your minority supplier development? How much money do you spend with black-owned media? What are you doing with HBCUs? You should have an entire list. And if they cannot answer appropriately, you should say you cannot buy a table at our event. Because They are playing you small. Let me just give you an example. The Urban League has a partnership with PepsiCo, Pepsi Foundation. I got no problem with it. 5-year initiative, $10 million. Pepsi announced this initiative where they're going to spend $100 million. They want to drive $100 million in receipts over 5 years to black-owned restaurants. I support that. Yet Pepsi spends $3 billion a year on marketing. If Pepsi contributed 5% of their annual marketing spend to black-owned media, just 5%, that means in 5 years, black-owned media would get $750 million. Now let's just do some math. $10 million over 5 years. They want to drive $100 million in receipts over 5 years. That's not their money. That's other people's money, but they want to push them to black restaurants. Or $750 million. Which of those three has a more dramatic effect on black America? The $750 million. But why is it that we will readily accept a small donation, which is simply white philanthropy, as opposed to a return on the investment of the amount of Pepsi we drink? $750 million versus philanthropy of $10 million. That has to change. Our organizations are literally accepting and being happy with philanthropic donations and not asking them, how are you impacting and working with black-owned businesses? And you might be saying, well, you know what, I think our black-owned business is doing fine. Okay, let's give you some stats. Pre-COVID, there were 2.6 million black-owned businesses in America. 2.5 million had one employee. Of the 2.6 million black-owned businesses, with 2.5 million have one employee, they're doing an average revenue of $54,000. Those are not black-owned businesses. Those are single entity, they're not even companies. Just because you got a business card don't mean it's a business. It's not. We have a capacity problem. We have a capacity problem because we're being frozen out of the country. Oh, by the way, when we had 1.9 million black-owned businesses and 1.8 million had one employee, they were doing an average revenue of $110,000. So we added 700,000 new black-owned businesses in the past 5 years, yet the revenue's been cut in half. You can't hire anybody. 2014, Wall Street Journal had a front page article that said, it was in March of 2014, it said in 2013, $23.09 billion in small business loans were handed out. Black folks got $385 million out of $23.09 billion. $385 million out of $23.09 billion. And so when I saw that article, I immediately sent an email to the White House, and I said, y'all got to have somebody from the SBA on my show to discuss this. And they gave me the runaround for 90 days, and Obama was president. And let me just be real clear. I was one of the folks who gladly supported President Barack Obama, but one of the greatest mistakes black people made is that we stayed at the inauguration parade when everybody else left. We were happy to see a black first family. We forgot he was the 44th. Which means we forgot to make some demands. You don't let somebody get your vote unless you ask for something in return. 90 days in his first administration, the LGBT community had a 54-page agenda for President Barack Obama. Black organizations waited until year 5 to actually have a meeting. And I was there. It took them 9 months to print the damn plan that they discussed at the meeting. I was there when that happened too. What I'm trying to get us to understand is I don't get excited if you have a black sheriff or a black city manager or a black mayor or a black city council. I want to know what you are doing while you are there for black people. My challenge to any elected official, whether you black, white, Latino, Asian, Native American, does not matter, is how are you using the power of your position to change things for the good? Why do I call Maynard Jackson one of the greatest elected officials ever in American history? Because his grandfather taught him the 3 B's, the ballot, the book, and the buck. And he used the power of the mayoral office to change Atlanta. The reason Atlanta today is called the Black Mecca is because Maynard Jackson said tumbleweeds will roll down that damn runway before I let that airport get rebuilt and black folks get no contracts. The city, white leadership in Atlanta hated Maynard Jackson. 1973, African Americans got 0.0012% of all contracts in Atlanta. And he came in and said, oh, Banks, call him to the office. He said, so I need y'all to extend credit lines to these black-owned businesses that got city contracts. The bank said, hell no. He said, city treasurer, come into my office. Please remove the city money out their banks. They were like, hold up. Wait a minute. He said, what's the problem? They got a city contract. You know we're going to pay them. We pay on a 180-day term. They can't float their businesses for 6 months. Y'all going to extend a line of credit. Please explain to me. That's not a race-based issue. Please explain to me why any city council, any county government, any school board can't require the exact same thing. You can literally require, if we are putting the city or county's money in your banks, you have to extend lines of credit to businesses, I ain't say black, any businesses that are getting school board, city, or county contracts. What is the greatest need for black-owned businesses? Lines of credit. That's how you use the power of politics to change the economics. That's what happened in Atlanta, and that's why you have the major construction companies, engineering companies, architecture companies, communications companies, because Maynard Jackson, followed by Andrew Young, followed by Maynard Jackson, and then of course you had Bill Campbell and Shirley Franklin, and on and on and on. They understood how to use political power to change the economic paradigm of our community. We can make jokes about Marion Barry all we want to, but you better understand that Marion Barry changed the economic reality of Black DC, which is now Black Prince George County, which is now all of the counties around. That's using political power to impact economic power. And so if we are going to be about Juneteenth and celebrating it, what really should happen with this particular event is that next year should actually be, there should be a report done by somebody next year to say, how did Missouri City, Fort Bend, change in the last 364 days? Because see, if we are holding events, MLK events, if we're holding Black History Month events, and now Juneteenth events, and all we do is have some unseasoned food, take some pictures, y'all know I ain't lying, so don't even front. Some of y'all were like, damn, I wish I had some Tony Chasterets in my bag right now. Don't even front. If all we do is come here for the event, take pictures, say who look cute, and go back home, and the city does not look different, the economics does not look different, then what exactly are we celebrating? What exactly are we commemorating? Every person in this room has to understand that what you do today can have a dramatic change on your children's children. Every single one of us is sitting here because a previous generation believed that there was something better down the line. My book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, dropped in September. And you know where that started? When Obama got inaugurated, it was a poll, and the question was asked, are you optimistic about the future of America for your children? Every group except white America, majority said yes. I said, September 2016, the question was asked in the poll, are you optimistic about the future of America economically for the next 10 years? Black people, lowest wealth, highest optimism. Latinos, second lowest wealth, second highest optimism. Asian Native Americans, white America, highest wealth, lowest optimism. See, for me, I go beyond what's on a layer. Captain Hughes said, you got to be deeper than mustard on a hot dog. And when I saw that, I said, wait a minute, hold up. How are black folk the brokest, but we got the highest optimism? And how are white people with the most money with the lowest optimism? Because the demographics are changing in this country. But what cannot happen are the demographics change in this country, but the money stays the same. King said in his book, it did not cost America much to allow us to sit at lunch counters, to swim in swimming pools. He said, but it's going to be a big check they have to write the wrongs economically. That's why Reverend Barber and the Poor People's Campaign are doing what they're doing. That's why we have to have a dramatic shift in our thinking. This is an economic battle that we are in. And if we continue to walk around in our nice attire, driving our nice cars, living our wonderful middle-class existence, and then we don't use the time that we have on this earth to literally change the future for our children's children, then the folk who we are most disappointed are going to be the ancestors who are going to meet us at that gate and say, what the hell did you do with what we left y'all? I am not interested in us simply gathering. I want us to do what King said, to use our collective power to change this country. America only understands money. And that has to be the demand that we make, and we must use every single thing in our arsenal, every organization, every individual, to change it. And I can guarantee you, when we are willing, as Reverend Jackson said, redistribute the pain, when they had those 1,000 workers in Memphis, when we begin to say, your bank don't want to lend, we won't bank with you. Your store won't spend with our businesses, we won't shop with you. Some people got mad at me when I said the other day that when everybody was all hyped because Macy's is selling divine sorority colored clothing. And there was no disrespect to the sister who's a Zeta who worked at Macy's, came up with the idea. That's her job, she's a buyer. But I then said, how much is Macy's spending with us? And then people got real quiet. And people said, Roland, why you got to do it like that? I said, because we're doing exactly what we've always done. Celebrate us spending and making somebody else rich. We owe it to our children's children's children to ensure that they have an economic future that looks different from ours. And until I take my last breath, I will do exactly like my frat brother, the only real fraternity. As Vertner Woodson Tandy said to the brothers in the 30s, he said, we will fight until hell freezes over, and then we will fight on the ice. That is how you commemorate Juneteenth. Show me the money.
Drop the mic.
Show me the money. All right, y'all come on.
And we give another round of applause to Roland. I give you a moment to quench your thirst, Roland. Well said. Really appreciate it. One of the things I wanted to mention, your high school counselor, Otha White, is my mother-in-law. I'm sorry. Kill me. She was to be here tonight, but she couldn't make it. But she sends her best.
Appreciate it.